begin, I'd ask all in-person participants to read the guidelines written on the cards on the table in front of you. They are measures in place to help prevent audio incidents and protect the health and safety of all participants, including our interpreters. You will notice there's a QR code on the card. It links to a short awareness video. Pursuant to the routine motion adopted by the committee, I can confirm the witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of this meeting. Please wait until I recognize you by name before you speak. All comments should be addressed through the chair. Finally, the clerk has distributed to members an operating budget of $32,600 for our current study. I need someone to move this for approval. Ms. Hurdle, thank you. All in favor? Passed. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, we are meeting today for our second meeting regarding our study on the state of creative and performance spaces across Canada. And we have with us today in the room from Secret City Studio, Christina Santiago-Keenan, President and CEO. From Marigold Cultural Center, André Mayette, Executive Director. There you are. Welcome, sir. From Rideau, online, joining us online, we have Frédéric Messier, Président. With us in the room from So Glad Arts, S.E. Grummett. Welcome. From Theatre Aquarius, one of my favorite places to go, online with us, Kelly Strawn. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And from Wavelength Music Arts Projects, Jonathan Bunce is with us here in the room. Each of you will have 5 minutes for an opening statement, and then we'll turn to questions from members. And we'll start with Secret City Studio. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's an honor to speak to you today. I'd like to present to you a case to consider heritage sites as a platform for immersive experiences and a means to support the next generation of artists and a way to build Canada's performing arts and entertainment industry. There's a clear generational shift in how people relate to narrative, entertainment, and to each other. The generation that grew up with the internet didn't just consume content, they participated in it. They built worlds in Minecraft, they co-wrote fan fiction, and adventured together in virtual worlds. Audiences no longer want to watch, they want to play a part. And we're seeing this behavioral shift in performing arts and entertainment everywhere. In music, Jacob Collier, who's lauded as the modern-day Mozart, sells out concert halls, conducting audiences in live vocal harmonies, producing viral content that reaches millions. In film and TV, Netflix opened Netflix House last year, permanent venues where fans can step inside their favorite shows and films, from being a participant in Squid Games to Hawking's residence in Stranger Things. And in theater, Punch Drunk transformed a 100,000 square foot warehouse into a fully immersive set. Sleep No More broke the fourth wall and invited audiences to wander freely and follow characters throughout. This ran in New York and Shanghai for over a decade. These are not fringe experiments. These experiences have entered the mainstream. So what is the opportunity for Canada? Disney's experience division, Parks, Resorts, and Cruises, posted record operating income of $36 billion last year. They built artificial worlds at enormous costs and became a global destination. Canada already has the real thing: Casa Loma, the village at Black Creek, Heritage Park, Hatley Castle, and 1,000 more across the country. These aren't theme parks, they're authentic heritage sites with real stories. For over 11 years, Secret City has shown what becomes possible when you merge site-specific storytelling with escape room game mechanics and immersive theater. We've built a world-class, cross-disciplinary creative team of producers, writers, directors, actors, designers, and technologists. In the tunnels and towers of Casa Loma, you get to play World War II U-boat researchers, join Rocco Perry's Prohibition Gang, or sign up as constables recruited to find Canada's beloved Detective Murdoch. At Old Mill, Toronto, and Peter Pan Bistro, we're reimagining dinner theater, where you get to interrogate characters, investigate your meal as part of a puzzle, and try to solve a murder. We've partnered with Fort Edmonton Park and Heritage Park to launch Canada's largest outdoor escape room as part of their nightlife activation. And we recently launched a family-friendly, screen-free video game called Lost and Found at the village at Black Creek, where players take on quests from townsfolk as if playing a live RPG. While we take kernels of history and develop them into more modern narratives, the heart of our stories celebrate our values, culture, and what it means to be Canadian. We attract tourists and locals alike, as well as a younger and diverse audience who might not have visited these sites otherwise. And the good news is they keep coming back. Over the last decade, we've shown that when you activate a heritage space in a way that gives people agency and buy-in, they feel a deeper connection to the stories we tell, the places they're in, and the people they're with. You make these places matter to a new generation. You make it profitable, and you create ambitious careers for creatives. So what I'm asking this committee today is to imagine Canada as a global destination for immersive, location-based art and entertainment, where stories come to life not behind a preserved velvet rope, but embodied and experienced. To take practical steps towards this vision, I'd ask this committee to consider updating funding programs so it includes this form of participatory performing arts, to invest in the infrastructure needed to make these heritage sites fit for this purpose, and to develop partnership frameworks for artists, organizations, and businesses so there's shared risk, shared reward, and a win-win. Canada has a rare advantage to meet this new generation where they are. We already own the most compelling stages on Earth, and we have a rare opportunity to lead what comes next. Thank you.
Now I really want to go to one of your theaters. That is great. I kept thinking of more places that would align really well with your idea. Thank you for that. We'll turn now to Marigold Cultural Centre. André Mayette, you have the floor now for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm here representing the Marigold Cultural Centre, located in the heart of Truro, Nova Scotia. We are a not-for-profit, multi-purpose facility housing a 208-seat theatre, an art gallery, an education space, and a celebration of local sports heritage. Day in and day out, we see firsthand what happens when a community gathers in a shared physical space to experience the magic of the performing arts. But I did not travel to Ottawa to speak only about our theatre. I'm here because, as a representative of the wider East Coast arts ecosystem, I want to share the broader picture of what our sector is facing right now, because our community is feeling a deep sense of uncertainty about the future. We cannot talk about supporting the next generation of artists without looking at the stability of the infrastructure that supports them. Recently, the cultural sector in Nova Scotia has experienced significant shifts due to the provincial budget. This included notable reductions to arts and cultural funding, including a 30% reduction to arts, Nova Scotia's budget, and the conclusion of several creative programs. Among those changes was the loss of funding for programs like Artists in the Schools. These initiatives are vital because they place professional creators in classrooms, sparking the imaginations of young Nova Scotians who might otherwise never have the chance to experience live theatre, music, or visual art. Now, I must note that these latest budget cuts didn't hit us as hard as others, simply because we had recently received a substantial grant the year prior. That funding was ultimately reduced by 20%, and although losing a portion of our funding presents its challenges, we remain incredibly grateful for the support we do receive. However, while the Marigold is in a position to manage this transition for the time being, many of our peers, including smaller community halls, fringe spaces, grassroots festivals, independent galleries across the province are finding it much more difficult to sustain their operations. When regional grants are reduced by 20 to 30%, it impacts the human resources required to keep these doors open. Without these spaces, we risk losing the next generation of Canadian storytellers to other regions or seeing them step away from their crafts entirely. Nova Scotia has always punched far above its weight culturally. Our province boasts a wealth of talent that has graced the Marigold stage, featuring artists who have gone on to capture the hearts of the audiences nationwide and globally. I see one right there. Hey, David. But every household name started as an emerging artist looking for a welcoming local stage to test their voice. Performance spaces are the true incubators for Canadian identity. If we do not protect and preserve these spaces, the next generation of artists loses the very places where they can safely learn, grow, and perfect their craft. Furthermore, we must consider the social impact these spaces have on our youth. In an increasingly digital world, younger generations are navigating growing feelings of isolation. Creative spaces offer a meaningful solution. When a teenager walks into our theatre, puts down their phone, and engages with a live performance, it builds empathy and connection. They see their own lived experiences reflected on stage and realize they're part of a larger community. By ensuring these spaces stay funded, we are protecting a vital social and emotional lifeline for our youth. We live in a modern, often distant society. We've been told for years that everything can be streamed, digitized, and experienced from afar. But a screen simply cannot replicate the collective experience of a live audience, the shared connection of a dark theater, or the standing ovation that brings a room of strangers together. Our performance spaces serve as the civic living rooms for our communities. They are places where we connect, find common ground, and celebrate our shared humanity. The federal government has a meaningful role to play in supporting this ecosystem. When local and provincial funding models shift or fail, federal collaboration and systematic support for infrastructure and operations becomes essential. I urge this committee to view investments in creative spaces not as secondary expenditures, but as essential infrastructure for our regional economies, our community well-being, and our national identity. Nova Scotia certainly needs it now more than ever. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Madame la Présidente.
Mr. Champoux?
Mr. Champoux, I didn't want to interrupt the witness, but I just wanted to note to the witnesses that the interpreters are doing their best to follow the rate to interpret as specifically as possible, but just keep in mind, please, that the speed, lower speed would make things easier for interpreters so they can communicate what we're listening to. Thank you. Thank you.
Ensuite, je tourne
Now, I'll turn to Rideau with Frederic Messier. You have the floor now for 5 minutes. Madam Chair, committee members, Rideau is the Professional Association of Performing Arts Presenters. We represent nearly 170 members, including about 100 presenters who manage approximately 350 performance venues in Quebec. Together, our members make more than 20,000 curtain raisings possible and reach nearly 5.2 million audience members each year. Our members are primarily multidisciplinary presenters. This means that within a single season, they present works from various disciplines of the performing arts and also help introduce emerging talent. They are often the primary professional gateway to the performing arts in their communities. But above all, our members are not simply venue managers. They are a fundamental link in the artistic chain. They select works, take artistic risks, develop audiences, and support the touring of shows throughout the region. They enable works to leave their place of creation to meet audiences in major cities as well as throughout the regions. For the next generation of artists, this role is crucial. An up-and-coming artist doesn't just need a space to create. They need a venue willing to book and promote them. They need venues willing to take artistic risks. Supporting presenters also means supporting the artists and companies who depend on the touring of shows to develop their careers and reach their audiences. That is why our message today is unambiguous. If performance venues become vulnerable, Canada's entire capacity to support its artists, circulate their works, and reach audiences will be compromised. Unfortunately, this fragility is already very real. Yet, presenters make a significant economic contribution. A study conducted by App Echo for Rideau found that its members generate $23.7 million in net tax revenue for various levels of government. Their local impact is also significant. A study commissioned by Edizo Seine estimates that its presenting organization members located in the Greater Montreal area generate an average of $2.38 million in indirect economic benefits each year within their communities. Unfortunately, despite these well-documented contributions, presenting organizations remain underfunded. Before the pandemic, multidisciplinary presenters received, on average, less than 30% of public funding in their total revenue, with barely 2.9% coming from the federal government. The Canada Arts Presentation Fund is one of the few federal tools that directly recognizes the role of organizations that professionally present arts festivals or performance series. The government has announced $46.5 million over 3 years, starting in 2026-2027 for this fund. This is a step in the right direction, but it's still clearly insufficient given the real increase in costs and the responsibilities assumed by presenters. Today, presenters must contend with a widespread rise in their operating costs. The financial model for live performance relies heavily on ticket sales, but according to Rideau data, more than 70% of a show's revenue is already absorbed by artist fees, royalties, and performance rights before the presenter can even cover their own expenses. Added to this is now the challenge of maintaining assets and infrastructure. A recent report by Théâtre Associé shows that the net cost of venue management increased by 53% between 2017-2018 and 2023-2024, while inflation was 20.4%. Every dollar spent on maintaining infrastructure is a dollar that does not go toward programming, artists, emerging talent, or audience development. We cannot claim to support the next generation of artists if the venues that are supposed to host, showcase, and promote them are themselves in a state of constant vulnerability. Rideau, therefore, makes 3 recommendations. First, substantially increase the Canada Arts Presentation Fund so that it adequately meets the needs of its clients and reflects the reality of presentation costs and the strategic role of presenters in artists' careers. Second, reestablish a strong federal capacity for cultural infrastructure that is not limited to specialized equipment but also supports asset maintenance, renovations, universal accessibility, the energy transition, climate adaptation, and venue security. And third, explicitly recognize presenters as essential partners in any strategy aimed at the next generation of artists. The next generation will not develop through creation alone. It will develop through encounters with audiences, through the circulation of shows, and through venues' capacity to take artistic risks. Governments have invested for decades in a network of cultural venues that constitute a collective heritage, but this network cannot be taken for granted. Without strong venues, there is no sustainable circulation of shows. Without strong programming, there is no equitable access to the performing arts. And without engagement with the public, there is no true development of artistic careers. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Vous. Next,
Thank
I
you.
will. So Glad Arts, S.E. Grummett in the room. You have the floor now for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Grums. I go by S.E. Grummett professionally, and I use they, them pronouns. I'm a transgender theater artist from Treaty 6, Saskatoon, and I'm here today representing So Glad Arts, a queer theater company based in Saskatoon, as well as I'm one half of the performance art comedy theater duo Creepy Boys. After graduating theater school over a decade ago, I became increasingly frustrated with the limited opportunities for trans artists like myself within mainstream theater. I wasn't seeing artists like me on stage or the kind of work I wanted to make. So I started making and touring my own things. For me, self-creation was and continues to be a way out. In 2016, I founded So Glad Arts, an independent theater company with a focus on creating new queer and queer-led performance. Over the past decade, So Glad Arts has grown from producing locally to touring on an international scale to 11 different countries and presenting work at some of the biggest arts festivals and venues in the world. As a company, we also have shifted from producing in fringe and indie spaces to more year-round national and international touring to curated festivals, professional commissions, and presentations. In 2024, we received Creative Export Canada funding for a 10-week UK and European tour of our queer clown show, Creepy Boys, touring it to 5 different countries: Ireland, Iceland, the UK, Germany, and Denmark. This tour allowed us to solidify our profile here in the UK and Europe and build relationships with international venues and presenters. One in particular, Literature House in Copenhagen, has since invited us back for a 2-week Denmark tour in 2025 and who is presenting our new show, Slugs, later this fall. This includes supporting us in building additional tour stops across Denmark. These relationships with international presenters would not have been possible without this funding. This tour also allowed us to lay the groundwork for future touring and build our audiences abroad. And now, 2 years later, we are still seeing the real impact of this funding. Last August, we premiered our new show, Slugs, at the largest arts festival in the world, the Edinburgh Fringe, to success far beyond our wildest dreams. For context, the Edinburgh Fringe is an incredibly competitive and difficult market, with over 4,000 different shows in the month-long festival, everything from large-scale musicals that end up on the West End to someone's grandma putting on their first-ever show in the basement of a burrito restaurant. It was here that Slugs sold out its entire run, received 14 4- and 5-star reviews, including one from The Guardian, won 2 awards, and was nominated for the largest award in its category, the Edinburgh Comedy Award. This is often called the Oscars of comedy, and past nominees include Flight of the Conchords, Susie Eddie Izzard, and fellow Canadian Mae Martin. Not only did Slugs have the financial and critical success far beyond what we imagined, but we found the international audience at the festival devoured it, with every single performance ending in a standing ovation. I believe our success with this show is directly in relation to the funding we received, allowing us to dream bigger and go further. This international success has continued to open doors here at home in Canada that we previously thought to be out of reach for us as scrappy prairie artists. This includes a recent presentation at Push International Performing Arts Festival and the upcoming Saint-Ars Biennale, both of which are some of Canada's largest and most prestigious arts marketplaces. And we're currently gearing up for our largest international tour yet in 2026, our second international tour just this year. I'm a weird kid from the prairies, so I never really imagined myself touring across the country, let alone internationally. Saskatchewan artists are vastly represented on both national and international stages. But because of this funding, all of this has been possible. Both the funding we receive from Canadian Heritage, as well as provincial funding and Canada Council from the Arts, is the backbone of our recent success, and frankly, our entire careers. It has taken years of building our relationships, gaining international recognition, and experience producing at an increasingly larger scale that have primed us for our recent critical and commercial breakthrough. If we did not have the funding to support us through each stage from development, production, and touring, it is incredibly unlikely we would have created the boundary-pushing work that we have been so recently recognized for. And we likely would never have been able to share that work with an international audience, particularly one that is largely unfamiliar with Canadian performance. Funding has allowed us to ask big questions, take bold risks, and be a part of an international conversation about performance. Abroad, when people talk to us after a show, we are often met with the phrase, "And you're Canadian?" Meant as a compliment, we always take this as a moment when someone realizes that their perception of what is Canadian, what is Canada, has changed. And this audience member is now offered a window into the complicated, beautiful, intellectual, hilarious mess that is the place we come from. I ask for this committee to ensure that this funding continues to be accessible for small companies and indie artists like the one I come from. With funding like this, Canadian Heritage, I believe we can see more outcomes like ours. Emerging voices from unexpected places, work that takes big swings and bold creative risks, and work that is uniquely Canadian and unlike anything else in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations on all your success.
Oh, thank you.
Next, I will turn to Kelly Strawn from Theatre Aquarius Online. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kelly Strawn, and I am the Executive Director of Theatre Aquarius in Hamilton, Ontario. For 53 years, Theatre Aquarius has been a cornerstone of Hamilton's arts community. We are the only professional theatre in the city. We own our building, which includes a 702-seat main stage theatre, a 120-seat studio space, a carpentry shop, rehearsal hall, and a beautiful lobby space. We produce 5 main stage shows each season, as well as 3 studio productions. We employ more than 300 people each year, from artists, directors, and designers to production personnel. We are deeply committed to supporting Canadian artists. In the last 5 years alone, 22 of the 29 productions on our main stage were written by Canadians, featuring Canadian casts and creative teams. Theatre Aquarius is also home to the National Centre for New Musicals, a program dedicated to the development of new Canadian musicals. Since its launch in 2023, we have supported 8 new musicals with more than $250,000 in funding. Our commitment to new musicals also extends to our main stage, including our recent production of It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken, featuring the music of the Tragically Hip. Within our community, we are one of the primary supporters of local artists through programs like our Brave New Works Festival that supports development of new Canadian plays, Bindigan, our Indigenous mentorship program, our artist residency program offering free rehearsal and performance space, our apprentice program dedicated to supporting IBPOC and female identifying individuals pursuing careers in technical theater and production, and our theater school and summer camps, which engage more than 500 children and youth each year. And truly, I could go on and on. This is only the tip of the iceberg. The work happening in our theater extends far beyond what most people see on stage. While our ambitions continue to grow, the reality of operating our building comes with significant capital pressures. I come to you today as a voice for those of us with venues to make sure we are a part of the conversation. For example, Aquarius recently undertook a $600,000 roof restoration project to keep the building operational after rain began leaking onto the stage and into our costume storage areas. We also need to replace theater seating that is more than 30 years old, and we need to install a new elevator. Every year, expenses grow, and we cannot raise ticket prices to match the increase. It would make coming to the theater unaffordable for most people. While the Canadian Cultural Spaces Fund provides valuable support for specialized equipment, where can arts organizations turn for assistance with essential building repairs and capital needs? Across the country, many arts organizations are operating in aging facilities that require significant investment to simply remain functional. Every dollar spent repairing a roof is a dollar that cannot be invested in artistic programming. For theaters that own and operate their venues, this is an ongoing and difficult reality that directly affects our ability to fulfill our cultural mandate. What can be done to help theaters across Canada? Well, I encourage this committee to seriously consider the Live Performing Arts Accelerator, a labor tax credit modeled after successful film and television incentives. This credit would offer a 25% tax rebate on production-related labor expenses. I know this idea is not new to you. The performing arts sector has been advocating for the implementation of this credit for several years. It would be a game changer for our industry, allowing us to invest more in productions, employ more people, and alleviate some of the financial pressures faced by theaters like Aquarius. It is also worth pointing out that theater buildings and all the activities held within their walls animate downtowns, create employment, and support tourism. We are economic drivers. Last year, approximately 125,000 people attended more than 265 performances at Theatre Aquarius. A full theater means thriving downtowns. For example, our recent production of the Tragically Hip musical generated an estimated $6 million in economic impact. The value of the arts is undeniable. The future of Canadian culture depends not only on the artists, but on the spaces that make artistic creation possible. Without support, we risk losing the very foundation that allow Canadian stories to be created and experienced. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of Theatre Aquarius.
Thank you for everything that Theatre Aquarius does for Hamilton. Finally, we have Jonathan Bunce from Wavelength Music Art Projects here in the room. You now have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to speak to you alongside my esteemed colleagues. My name is Jonathan Bunce. I am the co-founder and artistic and executive director of Wavelength Music, a nonprofit organization in Toronto that has supported emerging Canadian artists for more than 25 years through concerts and festivals and now a conference. I'm also the co-author of 2 recent research studies on the wider independent live music sector, reimagining music venues, and the forthcoming report, New Sounds, New Space. Across Canada, there are hundreds of creative and performance spaces that are largely invisible at a policy level. These are grassroots music venues, as well as rehearsal spaces, artist hubs, and DIY community cultural spaces. These spaces are where artists develop their craft, build audiences, and launch their careers. Yet most survive with little to no public support and operate primarily as commercial businesses. The central finding of our research is simple. Creative and performance spaces are cultural infrastructure, but Canada largely treats them as commercial real estate. This creates what I would call a value capture problem. The Canadian live music sector generates more than $10 million annually and supports over 100,000 jobs. Yet many of the artists, venues, and community organizations that generate this cultural activity are the least financially secure participants in this whole system. Too much of the economic value flows elsewhere, to landlords, ticketing companies, multinational promoters, and surrounding real estate, while the cultural infrastructure at the foundation of the ecosystem remains chronically undercapitalized. Our research points to 3 key challenges. First, Canada is losing the lower and middle rungs of the cultural ladder. Emerging artists depend on affordable, small, and mid-sized spaces to perform, rehearse, experiment, and build audiences. Despite their high demand, these spaces face rising rents, insurance costs, and operating expenses. If we care about the next generation of Canadian artists, we must care about the spaces where they get started. Second, the market alone is not solving the problem. Artists feel underpaid, audiences feel tickets are too expensive, and venue operators face increasing costs. The issue is not a lack of demand for culture, it's that the economics of providing cultural space no longer work on their own. We invest in libraries, recreation centers, and museums because they produce public benefit. Grassroots performance spaces also produce public benefit, yet are expected to survive on limited commercial revenue alone. Primarily, that means sales of refreshments. Accessibility is another consequence of this market failure. In high-cost cities such as Toronto, cultural organizations are often forced into the oldest and least expensive buildings they can find. Such spaces are rarely fully accessible, forcing operators to choose between affordability and accessibility when both should be a top priority. If we look internationally, particularly to countries in Europe, we see a different approach. Local governments frequently provide underutilized buildings to cultural organizations at low cost and support them with ongoing operational funding. These spaces are then able to focus on culture rather than mere survival. Third, cultural spaces require ongoing stewardship, not just capital funding. The recent insolvency of Artscape in Toronto offers an important lesson. The challenge is not simply building cultural spaces, it's ensuring that they remain affordable and mission-driven 20 years later. Capital funding alone is not enough. Long-term operating support matters too. So I'd like to leave the committee with 4 recommendations. First, recognize grassroots creative spaces as essential cultural infrastructure. Second, create dedicated capital and operating support streams for community-based creative and performance spaces. We welcome the ongoing support of the Canada Arts Presentation Fund and the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund, and would love to see these programs not just renewed, but have their budgets increased to not just match inflation, but the economic realities we now live in the 2020s. Third, support a national network approach to cultural infrastructure. Music hubs, rehearsal facilities, artist workspaces, and performance venues distributed across communities rather than concentrated in a handful of major institutions. And fourth, develop a national cultural space strategy that supports community ownership, long-term affordable tenancy, and operational sustainability. International examples such as the UK's Music Venue Trust or the Trans-Europe Halls Network demonstrate how community ownership can protect cultural spaces from displacement and rising rents. Canadian examples such as Hughes Room Live and It's OK Studios, both in Toronto, show that similar approaches can work here as well, though they're still in their infancy. 25 years ago, Ontario's cultural renaissance invested heavily in major institutions such as the Art Gallery of Ontario and the Four Seasons Centre. A national approach should complement those investments with support for the smaller grassroots spaces where future generations of Canadian artists are developed. It's time for Cultural Renaissance 2.0. In closing, Canada is known globally for our successful work to support artistic creation and presentation. We've been less successful at supporting the essential physical spaces where culture grows. Europe doesn't simply subsidize art, it also subsidizes the spaces where art happens. If we fail to invest in those spaces, we risk losing the infrastructure that makes Canadian culture possible in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now turn to questions from members, starting with Mrs. Thomas for 6 minutes. You have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to each of you for taking the opportunity to come here today and just to share your successes as well as your needs and the opportunities that you see within the industry. My first questions are going to go to SE Grummet. You talked a little bit about, actually quite a bit about, I guess, your success overall and the fact that federal funding really helped make it possible for you to be able to take your show, Creepy Boys, and take it to places in Europe and the UK. I think, did you say Iceland as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And I guess I'm just curious then, like in terms of taking that funding and exporting a product, you talked about it being uniquely Canadian. Maybe just talk a little bit about the show itself and how it's a reflection of Canada's culture.
Yeah, I think it's a reflection of Canada's culture because it's made by 2 Canadians. Like, I think that we often have and this is, I think, the thing that I feel so strongly about is when we go internationally, people have a assumption of what is Canada because it's what, we've been putting out there forever. But as 2 like scrappy little queer guys, anything we do on stage is very distinctly different, and it's deeply connecting with audiences internationally. I think we really try and put Canadian art in a box, and I think anything that exists outside of that also deserves to be funded because it does show that this place is more than one thing. It's more than just polite, nice theater, performance, music, dance. It can be anything, and it can be everything.
I think what I'm trying to drill down in here, I appreciate what you're saying, and the funding would come under Canadian heritage, which now is very much, the title would suggest is very focused on creating a sense of Canadian identity and conveying our values as a nation. And so you made a list of some things that like were not just these, but then what are we and what's being reflected in the art form that you're presenting?
Yeah, so I think specifically I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of like the performance style that we use. So often when we're touring in Europe, you'll see this style of clown that is very European. You'll see this style that is very, or LA clown, which is very sort of ironic and sarcastic. And I think to me, there's this beauty of Canadian performance, or at least in the realms that I play in, that is a lot more open-hearted, a lot more care for the audience, without being saccharine, without being hand-holdy. And I think it comes back to the artistic lineage of the clown practice here in Canada. It came from a practitioner named Richard Pachinko, who sort of studied in the European clown and then brought it back and worked. He was a bit more of like a 70s hippie. And so he sort of grew up, the Canadian clown scene has kind of grown up out of that practice. And it presents something really different than what you see, let's say, at the Edinburgh Fringe and other clown performances that tends to be a lot more ironic or our work is dark, but it's not hopeless. And I think that there is a hope that we try and bring. My clown teacher would often say, like, what is the gift for the audience? What is the gift that you're giving them? And I think in the work that we make, for us, it's giving our audiences, who tend to be like a lot of younger, poorer, queer folks, a sense of catharsis, a sense of feeling like they're not alone. And particularly the work we make, and I think the work of a lot of the other folks here make, we're aiming for things that are, you could only create it there in that moment. That's interactive with the audience. We're all here in a special shared space, as hippie woo-woo as that sounds. I think that that's the thing that is so needed right now, and we're seeing that from audiences. There's a show called Every Brilliant Thing that's on Broadway right now that is just completely selling out. And I think it is because it is interactive. It is asking something for the audience to be a participant in the art. And I think that is something that we do really well here and doesn't often get an opportunity to be seen internationally.
So Christina said,
you're like, back to my question.
No, it's great. Thank you. But so these comments around participatory art forms was also made by Christina Santiago-Keenan. I guess I'm just curious, and I do have questions for you in just a moment, but just coming here for a second, I guess I'm just curious, what does that participation look like in your show then?
So for us, we build these audience participation moments from a place of consent. And so it is I often use the phrase being a good clown or being a good host and making sure that folks feel included. Sometimes that means my first solo show is getting audience members to yell things out. We play games together. A more recent show is like we're actually in the audience crawling through them. And it feels like, I guess the thing we're going for is what can audiences not get at home on their screens? And that's something that we try and present as an alternative. I've done a show where we're all dressed up as houses roaming around through the public space. And people get to interact and play with us. And that is always very interesting and something very unique to what your day-to-day might look like or going on Netflix or something like that might look like. So I hope that answers your question.
I think so, yeah. I think so. I think that's basically my...
You got 10 seconds.
It's not enough to ask a question. I'll come back. Thank you very much.
Mr. Al-Sood, over to you for 6 minutes also.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being with us today. Ms. Santiago-Keenan, Mr. Mayette, not long ago I was at the Mississauga Arts Gallery for the media launch of Polis Days. It's an annual festival that happens in my beautiful Riding Mississauga Centre at Celebration Square that really celebrates Canadian Polish heritage. Now, the gallery itself isn't all that big, but it fulfills a variety of functions, in part because it has to stay financially viable. As you all know well, this is an increasing reality for public arts venues. Secret City Studio partners with major companies like Netflix and Nintendo, while operating in cultural spaces across Toronto, Vancouver, and Edmonton. You're also very unique in our arts ecosystem in that you blend commercial entertainment, immersive storytelling, and public cultural spaces. The Marigold Cultural Center serves as a theater, as a gallery, as a sports hall of fame, and as an educational space all under one roof. I'd like to offer you both the opportunity to speak to either the increasing need to rely on commercial partnerships or on multi-use business models to stay commercially viable.
Sure. I mean, I think one thing I'm very proud of about Secret City for the last 10 years, we have not had to pay rent, touch wood, because we have been able to take shared risks with our partners. We've been able to find the win-wins. Casa Loma, at nighttime, nobody's walking through the towers. I wonder what's happening here at nighttime. You can activate these spaces and bring new people to places that they wouldn't have otherwise. So it's really crucial for our business to be able to partner with these venues. And in terms of the more commercial studios, it's really helpful to reach audiences that think that escape rooms or immersive theater are these fringe things. They're actually quite accessible, and I think that's what makes them accessible is the stories that people can connect to.
Yeah, and for us, it's mostly trying to leverage our own community and people that support the arts as far as going through sponsorships for shows. That helps significantly, as well as trying to find ways to make extra money or save somewhere we can by partnerships with some of the alcohol that we sell in our bar or things to that effect as well. But partnering with community groups is certainly something that I'm very passionate about because I came to this theater from being part of a community theater group. And so leveraging that in our community and the wonderful patrons that we have, as well as a membership that we offer as well, has been very helpful. But as far as the commercial side of things goes, yes, basically reaching out and trying to find help with funding some of those shows through sponsorships has helped a lot with some of the more expensive shows because as a not-for-profit, we generally try not to make very much profit. We don't lose money, but we also want to try to keep it as affordable as possible so the tickets can be affordable for the community. That's what we try our best. So thankfully, there are many local businesses that help. We could use more, but you always could use more, but that helps a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Mr. Bunce, you have an incredibly rich depth of experience in the realities of accessing venues, funding, and touring infrastructure. In an interview with the CTV, you noted that original live music is actually one of Canada's biggest cultural exports, and without these vital spaces to incubate original music, we might see this die out. You also said that you, and I quote, can't get all the way out to the Rogers Stadium without going all the steps on the ladder. I'd like to offer you the opportunity to expand on that as well as on your report in partnership with U of T.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yes, the venue ladder is a really interesting concept. We often see sort of more media visibility for the top end of the venue ladder, the Rogers Stadiums and the Rogers Centers and other places named after telecoms. The major arenas, which are really important, which are the end goal for some but not all artists. Not all artists are going to rise the venue ladder. With Wavelength, we specialize in the lower, the small to mid rungs of the ladder, the mostly venues that are 500 capacity and under. And these are the spaces where you've seen historically, these are where music scenes develop. Is the small stages that might be your neighborhood cafe, it might be a neighborhood bar, it might be a small sort of a mid-sized concert theater. These spaces are the kind of place where traditionally, if you're an emerging band, a garage band, you could book them at no cost. That element has really gone away, and this is what in the music scene that I came up in the 1990s and into the 2000s. The accessibility of these spaces for emerging artists was key to sort of kind of unbridled creativity within the music scene. If you didn't, if you could get a Tuesday night at a bar like Sneaky D's in Toronto, you could put a show on with 3 other bands, charge a modest ticket price, your friends would come. That's how scenes develop across all genres. The Avril Lavignes and the Weekends and the Drakes, they all start out in these small rooms, and then some of them climb the venue ladder. Others, other artists who put out just as amazing music might reach like a smaller level on the ladder, but that's still important. And but now post pandemic, we've seen these spaces are no longer, even these small venues, are no longer can afford to allow people to, emerging artists or presenters to book the space at no cost. Now you're seeing facility fees. And as those cost barriers increase, either the ticket prices get passed on to the consumer, that's why you see rising ticket prices, and of course that creates a bit of starts to create a negative feedback loop where people go out less, and then you see less, sort of less viability and less support for these concerts, and especially when you're seeing at the higher end of the of the venue ladder, when there's more corporate consolidation going, when you have one multinational promoter that also owns one of the biggest ticketing companies in the world, that's what causes ticket prices for the bigger concerts to increase, and then that eats up people's entertainment dollars, and they have less money to go out and support the smaller artists.
Thank you all.
That was really valuable testimony. I think gets right to the heart of why we even called this study, and also took me back to my days working at the El Macombo in Toronto during journalism school. Monsieur Champoux, vous avez la parole maintenant pour 6 minutes.
Mr. Champoux, 6 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd also like to thank the witnesses for presenting to the committee today to share their experience and their expertise and their recommendations and their challenges in some cases. I'd like to speak to Mr. Messier, who's online. You talked about your organization. I'd like to go into more detail on the members you represent, because it's very broad. It's not just in Quebec. You have members who are part of your association, RIDO, cultural centers, venues, festivals, a large number of small and large festivals or medium-sized festivals, but there's an issue that comes back with a number of your members. Members who offer shows, and you mentioned it in your opening statement, it's about keeping buildings up. And we heard this at the beginning of this study. We just started this study and we've already heard about it. It's a major issue for those who put shows on, for theater troupes who have to deal with buildings that are falling down and there isn't much support to restore them or just keep them up, as you were saying. It comes from programming costs. So tell me what that's like as a challenge for organizations that are already on very tight budgets. Well, as you said, it's a very concerning issue because, as you no doubt know, the costs, the fixed costs in general, when you're an owner or even a renter, in some cases, have gone up significantly. But there's also timing with the fact that the requirements and the needs have gone up at the same time. In an economic context where public support is tightening at the federal level and the provincial level. So we find ourselves in situations where we have to take money that would usually go to our mission, money that should be used to pay artists, to pay for travel, for lodging, for professional technicians, to have a professional level in our promotions. We have to sometimes take that money for maintenance of assets, for equipment. Support is harder to obtain for that. So it's certainly an issue. So that means that a producer could decide to choose one production over another because the production would be less costly, would have fewer artists, fewer technicians, fewer people to pay. So it's not just the organization that will be affected. It's the whole cultural sector that will be affected in a certain sense. What we see is that, yes, there can be an impact on the producer's decision in structuring the show. But what we especially see is that shows don't make it to the regions. Productions aren't necessarily smaller, but they travel less because the cost to travel is too high. So for Quebec, there are venues that cover everywhere, but there are places that shows don't get to as much as before. And that's a concerning issue for us. And we're seeing it more and more. It's a trend that's increasing. We saw it in the regions. Often there are productions that are very successful in big cities. And when they go to the regions, there's a smaller distribution so that it's more agile, as you say, but it's because it's underfunded. And so troops have to do that. And let's talk about venues. In your recommendations, you talk about recognizing presenters as an essential link in the chain, as partners. And so this disengagement, the lack of recognition from the federal government regarding those who put shows on, do you feel among your members that there's a disengagement, a lack of interest? At a certain point, people will be fed up and they have to cut and find savings that they never should have had to, and they'll go do something else. We saw that during the pandemic as well. Technicians and actors who gave up and went and did something else because it was too difficult. Is that a trend as well for show presenters? Do they decide to go do something else? Are there people who do other things with their venues? What's certain is that we see that there's a fatigue that's accumulating in the teams. There's more people going off on leave, and mental health is concerning as well in general. And there aren't necessarily the means to carry out our work. So we've had to get used to doing daily miracles with what we do have, and that's tiring. So we see that a lot. And then, regarding the question of today, without solid venues to do what's needed to do, to bring people in and create that encounter between the public and the artist and their work, well, the funding policy for creation loses a lot of its impact because, yes, the work is funded, it's created, but if it's only shown once in a big city and it doesn't travel and it doesn't go meet different audiences, well, we're missing part of the goal. So it's about really benefiting from the full result when we have a solid distribution system that can go everywhere.
You now have the floor for 5 minutes. Are you ready?
I'm ready. May I call you Grums? Yeah. Okay. Congratulations, University. 2016, you earned the Bachelor of Fine Arts honors degree. Was Henry Wolf involved?
No, he was gone by then.
He was, eh?
Yeah.
But maybe talk about the city of Saskatoon. I'm from there. You've been there, from there. Kind of unique city for arts.
It is. It is. It's the big city in a it's the central hub. So artists from all over the province sort of end up there, which is quite a unique space. It also, it's not quite Edmonton. It's not quite Winnipeg in terms of an art scene. My mentor, Yvette Nolan, calls artists from there, she calls us theater rats. We do a little bit of everything. You're doing a little bit of stage design, and you're doing a little bit of directing and writing, and certainly my bachelor's degree was that. We would put on plays at lunch kind of thing with your friends. And I feel like my performance practice, which is now international, is still that, is just getting in a room with friends and putting on shows. I think Saskatoon has a really hard time being able to pay folks proper wages in the arts. A lot of times you're doing a profit share, so you're having to rely on ticket sales. And even then, I've done shows there where at the end of it, you're working for, months and months and months, and you make $200. That's certainly the indie scene, and then you have more established theaters like Persephone Theatre and Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan, which is like our summer Shakespeare festival. And I find that those institutions are programming very, certainly right now, a lot of what I would say are safe bets. So things that are known IP or like a Disney sort of musical. And those institutions aren't working with local playwrights. They're not working with local artists to create something new. Persephone in particular, I think probably pre-pandemic anyways, cut its entire sort of back deep end series, which was its sort of not its main stage 400-seater, but a 90-seater where a lot of like young emerging playwrights and even actors would come out. They would do more smaller scale, newer Canadian work. And so I had to turn to the Fringe Festival circuit to start like making and honing my own voice, as well as the indie theater scene Live 5, which is again where those profit shares come from, where you can't pay yourself. You're obviously having, most artists there will have to, you know, juggle 2 day jobs, even though the rents aren't like Toronto or Vancouver. So
Well, that's one of the questions I had for you. Are you making a living today? Or do you have
Yeah.
a second job?
I am making a living. I do
Okay.
this. I do this full time, and I think it's because I left. I think it's because I tour. There wasn't enough work for me there to only work in Saskatoon and only work in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, I've been down to the Fringe Festival lots in Broadway, but it's not the same now. I don't know if COVID changed everything or, you know, it's struggling. I would say, I mean, you're lucky. You worked very hard and you were rewarded. And those following you, what kind of advice would you give them? Because when we look at your resume, you check a lot of the boxes.
I think the real success we've had is because of being able to access funding. So the Canadian Fringe Circuit is very different than like Edinburgh, for example. The Canadian Fringe Circuit is all lottery based, so you'll put your name in a hat, and if you're drawn, you get an opportunity to do a show. And what's great is the barrier of entry is much, much lower. You pay something like $700, you get your venue, you get your technician, you get 7 performances, you get your registration in the festival, and oftentimes these festivals will house you as well. So you have this sort of gaggle of artists that will go from city to city to city throughout a summer touring a show. And that's what I came up in, was sort of doing that for a few summers. Edinburgh, on the other hand, I think the joke is like, you could sell it your whole season, and we did, and if we didn't have funding, we would have lost 10 grand. It is so expensive to do, and the barrier of entry is so high to be seen on those international stages. I agree. The Saskatoon Fringe Festival, I worked for them in their first summer back after COVID, and it was a struggle. It is a struggle. I think artists on that circuit anyways, they'll often, you know, just do the Fringe Festival in the summer. Some were full professional artists throughout the full year, but there's no bridge between those Fringe festivals and professional main stage shows, particularly in Prager.
Let me ask you, I'm running out of time here. What was the application process when you did get $11,000 grant from Heritage? So I think that's what we all want to hear.
Yeah.
What was that process about?
I think for me, the questions on those applications are very, very different than applying for something like Canada Council for the Arts, where you're speaking to a jury of peers. You can kind of, I've gotten this advice from program officers there, where you just want to like nerd out about the thing you want to make. Whereas Canadian Heritage was a lot more corporate speaky that I am not used to as an indie artist. I think I benefit from, there's a funding organization in Saskatchewan called Creative Saskatchewan I think that has been a huge stepping stone for us, because it allows you to apply for things like marketing costs, which are so important in these big festivals. So I think those applications were a bit of a barrier. And I'm somebody who's like very good at math, very good at doing a budget, and very good at knowing how to talk to those forms because of Creative Sask. I don't know if other artists would be able to answer those effectively and able to get that funding.
Sorry, that's time. Thank you very much. We're going to go over to MP Hurdle for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really wish I could take you all out for a beer afterwards. This is so cool. This is so amazing. However, we'll start with, we'll go to Mr. Mayette. You mentioned youth programming in your statement. I wonder if you could expand a bit on what kind of youth programming happens at the Marigold, please.
Well, there's several organizations that operate out of the Marigold that do have youth programming built into their infrastructure. So like Hubtown Theatre is one. They have a youth players group. We also host a Spotlight Theatre every year, which is basically the kids audition for a play. They get to come in, learn every step of the way, and then put on the production at the end of it. There's also another theater camp we do as well throughout the summer months. So summer's a bit of a harder sell with tickets in our area. Usually the weather's nice, so people like to get out and do stuff. So this kind of gives us a way to offer something to the community and also offer the students and the kids something to do during the summer months.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know I've been in the Marigold. I'm from the same town, just so you know. I've been in the Marigold many times where there's an event in the theater, there's a rehearsal in the workshop, there's something else happening in the boardroom. I'm wondering, obviously there's demand there for space. What would you say are the most significant barriers facing artists and community organizations seeking access to affordable rental studio performance spaces?
For the costs, everything's very expensive. Like our building it's an older building. It was originally a movie theater many years ago and converted into a performing arts center. You look at what it costs just to fix the heating system. We've gone through that quite a bit this past year, as well as during winter. And it seems like every time we think we got a handle on it, something else happens. So as far as keeping those costs as low as we can, on top of all the other things, but when it comes to the performing part of it, the acts that we get in, there are quite a few. We walk an interesting line because we're trying to provide theater for our community in an affordable way, but then we also want to bring them cool acts that appeal to many different multiculturals in our group, and to find a way to be able to do that, to be able to charge a low ticket price to get people out, and also be able to make those afford those. So those are the most significant barriers, I would say, is mostly fees in which trying to pay the artists what they're worth, but also keep the ticket prices low enough that our community can afford to come out and enjoy a night of culture.
Right. Thank you for that. Rough guess, how many days would you say the theater is dark in the run of a year?
Oh, not that many, thankfully, because we do a lot of community stuff. We have theater groups, and we offer them free space to rehearse. They rent the theater for when they do performances, but they get free space to rehearse. We also have, with all the different classes, rehearsal spaces going on, boardrooms, and thankfully, as a rental space, we have a lot of organizations using us for their AGMs or their community events, awards, stuff with the business community. So thankfully, not very much. I would say maybe once or twice a week there might not be anybody in there, but it's rare. So which is nice.
I would agree. There's always something happening at the Marigold. So wondering, extrapolating from that, how large an impact would you say that the events that happen at the Marigold impact the economic development and tourism in northern Nova Scotia?
Oh, I'd say it's quite significant. We're working our best to try to be like we are Truro. We're not Halifax, but we are doing our best to try to offer to our people some of the acts and the performances that they would get there quite a lot easier. So because of that, we bring in lots of acts that. I'm trying to bring in lots of acts that would bring in lots of folks to the area outside of the normal realm. I'm also working on trying to make our venue more of a festival space as well. And there are a lot of things I haven't cleared with my board yet that I don't want to list off all my plans. But, there was a very significant blues festival in Truro that has gone away, and I'd like to see that come back. There's also some other convention-type things that go on in the nerd community and stuff like that I'd like to help bring out as well.
Community.
So, yeah, I'm a very proud member of that. So.
I love that, and I hope that you're going to talk to Grums afterwards
Absolutely.
about bringing
Looking forward to that, yes.
Creepy Clowns there. Absolutely. And then I have a few seconds left. So how can the federal government help with basically helping the municipality preserve cultural spaces and identity?
A lot of the things that I'm fairly new to this position. I've only started acting in September and in an interim basis and was given the position in January. But the CAF funding, like the CAPF funding that we get, the Creative Space Presenter Fund, that's been very helpful. There's a lot of work in the way that can kind of supplement bringing in larger acts that to keep the ticket prices low. That has helped a lot, in which, say, we'd bring in something like a ballet from, which we recently had Ballet Kelowna, which is a beautiful, amazing show. We did not sell at the theater, but there was 80 people there. So, unfortunately, they're a very expensive show. We're very happy to present them. The 80 people that came loved it. They saw something they would normally get to see in their area. But the cost for that is significant to us. It'd be nice to have something in place. I do love the idea of the tax incentives that was mentioned earlier. That sounds wonderful. But funding like that tends to help so that we can supplement maybe a high-cost show, but offer an option that we can still keep those ticket prices low, and that's the most important thing. So,
What a time. Thank
yes,
you.
more of that, please. Thank you.
Monsieur Champoux, la parole
Mr.
maintenant.
Champoux, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes. Thank you. I'll come back to you, Mr. Messier. Earlier, at the end of your answer to my previous question, you raised something I found very interesting. You talked about the state of the troops. You said that more and more people in your sector are starting to find it hard. It's heavy, conditions are more and more difficult. And one of your recommendations is to recognize presenters an essential partner. Do you have the impression that people who create the programs, who support the presentation of the arts, like the Canada Arts Presentation Fund, do you think they're aware of the state of things, how people are doing in this sector? Are they aware that those who consume culture, a large percentage of them, find that access to culture is essential to have good mental health? I think it's all interconnected. You raised this earlier, and I'd like to hear more about this. Well, to answer the question, I would say that no, we don't always feel that it's assessed fairly or correctly. The people who run venues or the people who put on shows, it's about recognizing the quality of work. These are professionals who are doing their work and doing exceptional work with exceptional results. And it's true that in terms of the social impact that we can have in our communities, it's very significant. I'm also the Director General in the Eastern Townships, and we're really the social lungs of our town of 5,800 people. We have a group of about 100 volunteers who welcome audience members. They're there throughout the year. So the community is involved. It gives a lot of meaning to their involvement in their municipality. So the impact on the social tissue is huge. When you talk about the cultural centers, it's municipalities and towns that have to support these organizations, and it becomes very difficult. And the lack of support from the federal government is felt locally. Do you see that in Waterloo and like we do in Drummond, where we have a very dynamic cultural sector? Yes, we feel that municipalities are really struggling to keep up their financial support because they're also struggling with maintaining infrastructure. It's huge in Quebec. So it's difficult for them. And we're close to the municipalities, and that allows us to keep them well informed, and they want to support us, but their means are so limited that they're not always able to keep up. So it's difficult. Thank you very much, Mr. Messier.
Mr. Hardy, welcome to Heritage Committee. You have the floor now for 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of the witnesses for joining us today. I'll give you a moment. Are you hearing well? Yes? I think the parallel we can draw is that everyone says that life is very expensive. Everything is too expensive. Renovating buildings, you talked about that, and renting halls, the price of everything. Artists, well, it's a difficult trade. They have a hard time making ends meet. Sometimes they have to have an extra job. And so there's a recession, and 2.2 million people are lining up at food banks. So everyone is really hit hard by this reality. So artists and farmers and workers. However, I think culture is essential. Culture needs to be there. And we have a right to dream, to create, to entertain. Access to culture is essential. But sharing our vision of life and maybe helping people dream in more difficult times. So I think everybody agrees that the cost of living is out of control and that we need to better invest our money. So my question would be for Grums to begin. How can we ensure to respect taxpayers that every dollar that is spent will be looked at as being profitable, that everybody will be proud of it, that they'll say, we've invested in this, but we're proud to have done so. because we're being seen internationally and we're proud of Canada and Quebec. How can we justify this?
I think one argument is that with all of the funding we received, we were able to pay a lot of Canadian artists. It wasn't just going to like Airbnbs in Edinburgh. And I think that's why our show was so successful, is because we actually were able to build a really big team. So I think there's one justification there, is like it actually creates a lot of jobs. The other justification is...
Juste une petite question.
If I may ask a question. Earlier, you said if it weren't for the subsidy, you would have been $10,000 short. So you, in the end, was it positive for taxpayers? Will they say it was profitable? Or without their money, you wouldn't have been able to manage?
I think it is profitable in the way that like we are seeing these ripples year after year after year. And so the 2 international tours we are doing currently, we are now getting to a place where our touring can be supported by presentation fees from international partners and ticket sales in a way that 2 to 3 years ago, we weren't seeing that. It's taken us years. It's similar to the venue question of like, what is the small to mid-range support that we need as we are playing to small and mid-range? And I mean, we're still playing to small and mid-range, but we are now have built an audience internationally. We have built a repertoire of reviews and awards internationally that our shows can be successful without that taxpayer funding, and it can be profitable without that taxpayer funding. And it can also get the international recognition without needing to be subsidized, but it has taken years of sort of building to that place.
Donc, ce que vous dites, dans le fond, c'est que l'investissement
So what you're saying is that the initial investment allowed artists to become independent without having to continue to receive funding. So it helps you get off the ground, but today you can make your living without always having to ask money from the government. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and particularly because we aren't playing to 400 to 700 seaters every night, we need to be able to show presenters and venues that our show is like has merit and has reviews. And oftentimes, when we're premiering a new work, you kind of look at it as a loss because you're investing in something that's going to keep touring 5-10 years down the road. And I think that we look at other industries and we go, yeah, that's worth that creative investment for that period of time. But the life cycle of these shows is a lot longer, and the life cycle of these artists is a lot longer than I think we necessarily assume.
Merci. Je vais diriger ma question
Thank you.
vers...
I'll ask a question now to Ms. Santiago Keenan. You received $150,000 for a murder mystery immersive experience in the United States and in London. So people go eat there. How much Canadian food is part of this? How are we exporting our culture, our knowledge from here to internationally? Are people eating Canadian food? Are they experiencing Canadian values? What is being exported finally for $151,000?
Yes, thank you for the question. We do partner with local restaurants in both London and in Boston. But what we're exporting is, I think, a new genre that we, made up and invented because of this funding. Was very supportive of that. Making food part of the puzzles is part of this experience. It is a murder mystery. Inspired by Murdoch mystery to some extent, and that genre of entertainment. So while there's not a specific, Canadian beef necessarily that we are exporting to the restaurant.
Personne qui va vivre l'expérience là-bas.
No, somebody who goes there. We are out of time for these questions. Excuse me. It's already over time. Ms. Auguste, I give you the floor now for 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My first question will be for Mr. Messier. Thank you very much for joining us today. So you really have a big network of people and venues throughout Quebec and Canada. You have the Terrebonne Cultural Association, which is part of your network. They too, as we've discussed, have infrastructure issues, but you're also all over Lanaudière or more remote areas can you talk a little bit more about the experience of keeping assets up in more rural areas, places that are further from cities? Well, there are different cases. There are a lot of venues in the regions that were transformed. Often they're old churches that become venues. Sometimes they're more recent buildings that were built to be theaters, and they were designed for that. But when we are in more rural areas, with buildings that were transformed, it's more difficult to respect the security and technical standards because buildings weren't originally designed for that. The fact that the requirements are quietly going up, it's 2026, standards are ever present, and so there's more spending required for that, more expenses. And then there's universal accessibility and having green standards, energy, etc. And so to keep up to date, it involves significant investments, and currently funding for that is harder to find. And sometimes we really have to use our surpluses that should be for our mission, and we have to use that money to keep up our assets. Thank you very much. My next question will be for Ms. Santiago-Keenan. I'm a big fan of what you do. I find it really interesting that you bring theater not only with the heritage we already have, but you're reaching younger people who can see theater in a new way, who can see it in a more creative way. Can you talk about the demographics of the people who go see your immersive experiences?
Thank you for the question. It's so interesting. It's all walks of life. We have like 10-year-old birthday parties, and then we have 70-year-old birthday parties. We have locals, we have tourists. Yeah, I think a lot of lawyers, for some reason, really like our experiences from a profession point of view. And I think just if we think about what we're used to and how we're experiencing digital life, we're taking those behaviors to the real world. And I think there's just a generation who's just expecting to participate. And so I'm seeing more mainstream than not, honestly. And age ranges, again, young professionals. We have, older folks come in, families. We do a lot of corporate team building. So yeah, it really is across walks of life.
Merci beaucoup. Puis,
Thank you very much. And can you tell us more about where this way of joining heritage and this new immersive experience comes from?
A lot of inspiration, I would say. We did some research around the world. We went to London. They do some stuff in warehouses. In Los Angeles at Knott's Berry Farm, we did an experience there. It was like, an artificial Western town. We were approached by Liberty Entertainment Group who is running the Casa Loma programming 10 years ago, and they invited us to do an escape room there. And so we brought all these sort of international experiences of live theater. We also fell in love with escape rooms, and it just felt like the right fit. Also, frankly, it was like a clear opportunity. Again, I don't like necessarily having to pay large amounts of rent, and so these partners were willing to take risks with us and willing to share revenue in terms of ticket sales. They were willing to also co-market the experiences, and so it really was a win-win to find the right partnership.
Merci beaucoup. Puis, je vais juste dire
Thank you very much. I'll just say that I'd really like to see you in my region and in Quebec a little bit more. Thank you.
Go to the Kingston prison, escape from the prison, right? Who's next? Ms. DeRitter, are you ready? You've got the floor now for 5 minutes. I think you're sharing with Mrs. Thomas. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayette, I wanted to ask you the first question. In my riding of Kitchener Centre, we're fortunate to have a vibrant arts and culture community from local theaters, our center in the square, to our festivals like the Blues Fest, and grassroots organizations like the Registry Theatre that brings people together on a local level, grassroots level. What do you think about the future of Canada's creative sector and how important community-based cultural spaces are?
Oh, I think they're incredibly important. I mean, Canada's so vast, and each of our small communities has such a wide berth of what they've offered in the cultural conversation, or in the countrywide conversation, but also locally as well. I know I mentioned earlier there's a blues festival Troy used to have. It was called the Dutch Mason Blues Festival, named after Dutch Mason, who was a big blues artist from our area. So in order to celebrate what he's contributed to Canadian culture, as well as, to the blues industry in general, was very rewarding as our community to be able to celebrate that on a national stage and bring in lots of other artists from all across different places that work within that world. Even Dan Aykroyd was there with the Blues Brothers kind of thing, which is very cool at one point. So I think as far as our identity goes, like being from Nova Scotia, I feel like we are a very small player, it seems, in the national conversation sometimes, and there's a lot of amazing artists that come out of our area and some that go on to massive success. Like I was just at the East Coast Music Awards, and Goldie Boutier was there, who's now in LA doing amazing things, but she's from Cape Breton, and it was very cool to be able to celebrate that and see her creative voice get to such a larger level. But it all started in Cape Breton. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the question.
Christina, I'll go to you next. So the $150,000 investment into the Murder Mystery Theatre, can you tell me what parts of that are Canadian content?
The whole thing was written by a Canadian team. We did partner with Netflix, their film Glass Onion. That was a strategic play to get marketing eyes and resonance with a larger audience.
Because the funding was meant to celebrate our heritage and Canadian culture. I'm just going to ask again, what piece of that is our Canadian heritage and our Canadian culture?
In terms of the storyline or in terms of the actors? The whole production itself, again, was created homegrown by Canadian actors and designers. The story itself is fictional. It's about Maribel Moore, a chef who had like a group of friends and is sort of doing a kind of revenge dinner and revealing a dark past.
What investment is it for Canadian heritage to have made $150,000 investment and not showcase our amazing heritage, our Canadian heritage? What is the...
It's putting us on the map in the world for new, innovative, creative, new genre. Like there hasn't been anything like this in the world that has been produced. Again, there's been plenty of murder mysteries, but in this case, you're interrogating characters, you're playing with your food to solve a puzzle. This is
a way that we could have created the characters or played with the food and celebrated our history in that as well.
We could have. This was an export grant, so this was already developed. We did it bootstrapped ourselves, and we are very thankful for the export grant and was chosen for that. But it was to showcase Canadian innovation and talent.
So I just wanted to clearly, I guess, get it on record today that the purpose of the grant was to celebrate Canadian heritage, and I'm not 100% sure that the return on investment in this case was making sure that we were actually celebrating our heritage. Thank you, Christina, for your time today. And I just have one last question for, I think it's Mr. Messier. Did I pronounce that right?
Oui.
Thank you. It seems as though inflation is even affecting the arts and culture sector. You mentioned in your speech that the increase has been 20%, but I'm going to assume that same percentage can't be applied to ticket sales because of the affordability crisis that we're facing here in Canada as well. So can you just give us a couple of ideas of how this government can support the arts beyond just funding in relation as well to affordability in Canada?
Ben, c'est sûr que nous, on a...
Well, we have our network, which is local. We have our ways of doing things in Quebec. In terms of the ticket prices in venues that Rita represents, the evolution of the price of tickets has nothing to do with what you would see in major arenas and international productions. It's different. So the increase in ticket prices is less high for us. And then, what can you do to help us? Well, what I believe is that show producers have to have stability in culture in Canada. So when we have artists come from the next generation, it's when it's their first show, there's guaranteed payment, which is a few $1,000s. So for them, it's a big opportunity to build by getting that compensation. And how do we fund that? Well, we do it in part with your funding, but also with the surpluses we generate with better established artists who generate more revenue. So what we need is stability for funding, because every dollar you send to us, there are more and more studies demonstrating that we multiply that dollar. So there are bigger benefits than just the dollar we received. So I think it's important to state that. And then I'd like to mention that the program for strong rural regions, it would be important to have a minimal threshold that would be reserved for cultural infrastructure, because if there are all of the infrastructure needs, it's easy to just relegate culture to the background. But the impact of cultural infrastructure in rural areas and communities is so important. We need to protect it. We need to have some protection for that funding for those sites. It's very important. Thank you.
I want you to stay engaged in the conversation. I'm not sure if you've taken the question yet. I know we've spoken at this committee today about the importance of smaller venues. I'm not sure if Theatre Aquarius counts as a smaller venue, but in musicals, for example, I know Michael Rubinoff has debuted a couple of his new musicals at Theatre Aquarius. How important do you think it is to have a venue like that for a musical, a Canadian musical, to debut?
Well, I think that, in terms of our community, we are the cultural hub for all of the indie arts happening in the city. They need venues, they need rehearsal halls. Our studio space is in high demand for all kinds of new work to premiere. Like, we are never dark. There is always something going on. Even in our lobby space, we will have theaters that come, and because they can't afford to have an office space, they use our lobby space. And we have 3 companies that just come in, and the wonderful part is they get to interact with each other. We get to have conversations with them. So we really are a cultural hub in our city. And I would say for things like, as I mentioned, we're the home for the National Centre of New Musicals. Musicals are not sole ventures. You need the book writer, you need the composer, you need all kinds of people as part of the creative team getting this thing up and running. So of course you need a venue to come to, you need a place. So we actually design the program so that in January we have artists throughout the building. They are creating. Then we do a National Musical Theatre Summit. We have people from across the country and internationally come to that summit to see the new musicals that are being presented, with the idea that they will have a life outside of our National Centre for New Musicals. So it really is about being the incubator, being the space where people can come and where they can create what they need to create. And you're right, Michael Rubinoff is absolutely a part of that. He is best known as the originating producer of Come From Away. And of course, we all know that that is the saddest story in musical theater, because it is one of the greatest successes. It is the most produced musical in North America. And because Canadians didn't invest in it, every time it is produced, Americans get rich. So a good Canadian family sits down and watches Come From Away in London, Ontario. It just closed in the Grand last week, and Americans make money. So I think that it is pointing to, we need to invest in these cultural spaces and in artists and in new works happening.
Thank you for that. I'll turn the floor now over to Mr. Miles for 5 minutes. Oh, go ahead.
Chair, just a quick clarification. The chair, of course, has the prerogative to ask questions, but generally in other committees, it then counts towards the round for that political party. Certainly when I've taken the chair, I've treated it that way, and so I'm just curious how you're treating it.
No, every committee I've sat on, the chair just has a prerogative when they want to ask a question, so I did not add it on. But I do know that the Conservatives had an extra 2 minutes on their last question, so I thought it was an appropriate time to take
great.
that
It's a great clarification of rules for future when I'm in the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miles.
Thank you very much. We have fun in this committee. This is a really important study and one that I'm so glad we're doing. I thought it was important to bring this study forward because, and Jonathan spoke about this in particular, we often celebrate artists once they're exporting, once they're in the big rooms. But the reality is we will not have artists in the big rooms unless we support them when they're in the small rooms. It requires a lot of risk, a lot of failure. Like every other business that we invest in Canada, they don't always work. Not every show works. It's about experimentation and creating space where people can take those risks without breaking the bank. I thought it's been really, this group today has been really important. We've talked about the importance of networks. I think les réseaux comme Rideau sont tellement importants au Canada.
Networks like Rideau are so important in Canada.
So we have an artist here. I think it's important for us to have a sense of that journey. You've talked about playing in the basement of a burrito restaurant. Well,
but very similar.
As I have experienced as well. I mean, I just think we've all experienced that. As you know, is it where you start to what does it look like to support that bottom rung of the venue ladder? What did the bottom rung of the venue ladder look like? Was it anywhere near public funding? You know, a lot of the cases, it's not even. It's some sort of all ages venue. It's a basement somewhere where you put up your own lights or whatever. But what does that journey look like for you? Because now you've arrived at a place where people are going, yay, yeah, you're exporting, you're doing us proud. What did it look like in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, we're still at a place where we're putting up our own lights. So like that, so like I said, I started on the Canadian Fringe circuit, and I think uniquely because I'm from Saskatchewan, I was able to access Creative Sask touring funding to support that Canadian Fringe tour and be able to like pay ourselves a living wage, because otherwise you're making lunch money. And from there, I was able to sort of scale my work up, hire other people to come on as directors or outside eyes, whereas I think a lot of artists have to sort of keep it in the basement of a burrito restaurant. And that funding doesn't exist in other provinces. So a lot of other artists can't take their work from those fringe spaces to a more professional stage and be able to invest in tech and other people and outside eyes and even marketing, which is so important when you're trying to stand out in these big festivals of 4,000 shows. So that was sort of the bottom rung. And then with that Creative Sask funding, I was able to make another show and then start sneaking my toes into international venues. And I think I am not a unique artist where it wasn't until I took my work abroad that I got recognition at home and doors opened to me back at home. They were completely shut to me for a very long time until I was getting reviews from abroad, and then you could take it to venues and go, see, look, The Guardian loves us. Please let us into your space. And I think that I'm currently in this weird middle space where I'm not quite emerging anymore and I'm not quite established anymore. And yeah, I'm still putting lights up in my own venue, but that's okay. So that's a bit of the bottom rung. And I think if I wasn't able to access that provincial funding and then eventually Canada Council funding and then eventually Canadian Heritage funding, I would have never been able to continue to tour and be able to scale up my work and take those creative risks that has resonated so deeply with audiences around the world. So I definitely encourage you. And speaking to what is Canadian about this Canadian heritage, I think we don't expect work from the UK to speak about the Queen or work from the States to speak about the Founding Fathers, but we have this weird pressure as Canadian artists that we always have to be speaking about our history or where we come from. And I think some of the work that has broken through from Canada, things like Kids in the Hall, things like there's a movie called Dead Lover that's been sweeping the indie film circuit, things like Nirvana, the band, the show, they're weird. They're weird pieces of our realities and our life. And it's not just always a historical play. So yeah, I think encouraging funding for work that is unexpectedly Canadian.
I certainly agree. And I mean, there is a difference between heritage and culture. I mean, history and culture. Culture is a living thing. It moves forward. And certainly not up to parliamentarians to decide what that is, I would say.
I think audiences are speaking to that.
Yeah, I agree. Jonathan, if you might just speak just quickly to that, where space plays a role and supporting space through the artistic journey.
Absolutely. I mean, the sort of the music equivalent of the burrito place is sometimes a burrito place as well. You know, it's the as I was saying, there are these spaces that sort of actually exist in the commercial sphere that have taken on this kind of accidental role as cultural centers, like to the concert goer that's going to the El Macambo or to Club Soda or to the Commodore Ballroom. They don't to the concert goer. They view these spaces as being culture centers. As the showgoer often doesn't know where the funding is coming from, may not be aware that these are often usually places that started out as bars that booked entertainment in order to sell more alcohol. That's the old sort of 20th century economic model that these spaces are based upon. That is not working anymore. You know, there's in my opinion, these important spaces that are the first stages that allow people to sort of springboard up the venue ladder to build their careers, to get to that level of international acclaim. They need to be viewed more like cultural community centers or libraries, you know, given a modest investment of public funding because they provide important public health and economic vibrancy and safety benefits for communities, in addition to providing this sort of fertile ground in which artists can experiment and launch their careers.
Thank you very much. Merci. Thanks.
Merci, Monsieur Champoux, pour 2
Mr.
minutes.
Champoux for 2.5 minutes. I really appreciated what we've just heard at committee. I'm a little bit tired of hearing that when we fund culture, we expect something in return. Grums said it well. I don't want every production we invest in that we need to see mousse and poutine and maple syrup. When we fund culture, it's about our talent, our creativity. We want to show the whole world that we're competitive with other nations, with the Americans who have more means than us and the Europeans as well. When we say, where was the poutine in the movie that we funded with public money? That bothers me to hear that. The other thing that really bothers me, Madam Chair, is the fact that we still see culture as an expense and that we expect a production like Grums, oh, we gave you money, how much did it bring in? That's not how we should look at culture. It's not a per project funding model. Culture is an investment in society. There's $65 billion in our GDP that comes from culture. Every dollar invested in culture brings in $29 in all sorts of benefits. We shouldn't just look at each individual production of an organization or a troupe. We need to look at everything that's generated. Restaurants, hotels, taxis, babysitters who are hired. Money is being spent when people go see a show, far beyond the ticket price. And I'm tired of this. People say culture is a luxury, an expense. It's a societal need. It's part of our identity. And I'd like it to be seen that way. And it goes from the opposition to the government in the way programs are designed. We don't have the means to increase this. No, we can't afford not to do this. We don't have the means to underfund culture. And I really had it up to here that we're asking each production why there wasn't enough hockey or maple syrup in it. It becomes just unbearable to listen to this. Madam Chair, I'm looking at the numbers that were published in a study from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. It's not a lobby group of Quebec. It's the Chamber of Commerce of Canada. These are people who surely know about let's say, subsidies or investments. So tax revenues, $17 billion a year. Should that be dismissed just because we say it's a luxury to fund culture because Grum's production isn't bringing in enough money? for our investment, it's a little ridiculous to think like that. 13 jobs that are generated per $1 million investment. That's a better return than oil and gas. That could be an argument for my friends on the right. So I think the government needs to start looking at culture as a need. It's about our identity. It's exported, and we shouldn't restrict this. Thank you.
Bien dit, monsieur.
Well stated, Mr. Shampoo.
Monsieur Hardy, je m'excuse, je savais
Mr.
pas.
Hardy, I didn't know you were francophone the first time I spoke to you. Now you have the floor for 5 minutes. No problem, thank you. So I do agree with my colleague. Culture is very important. It's at the basis of society. We need it to advance and to know where we come from. But that being said, it's a little funny to think that we shouldn't look at the numbers and then we're told the return on the investment with numbers. So when we take public money, it's taxpayers. So I agree. For every dollar invested, $29 in return on investment. We need to support culture. It's very important. We need to support our artists. I'm really proud of what you answered, Grums, because earlier you said that you were able, after that, to make a living, and you were able to bring your art to an international stage. You've become a Canadian artist who is known abroad. And so it's a good investment. However, when we ask the question about is there something Canadian in a production that receives $151,000, I'm not asking you to pour maple syrup on people's heads. That's not what it's about. But somebody who experiences your show, will they understand they're experiencing something that's offered by Canadians? That was my question earlier. It's not against what you've done. But if the person goes to your show and experiences something in Boston, near where they live, and then goes home and doesn't know they experienced something that was paid for by Canadians, well, maybe we're missing the goal. We need to focus on the goal because the fund, as it's defined, and maybe I'll pick up on this question, the fund is supposed to be for exporting Canadian culture, so to increase the export revenue of the Canadian cultural sector. So it's about revenue. It's in the definition. So we're not attacking culture, Madam Chair, when we ask to have a return on investment. We're just looking at the definition of the program, of the funding program. There's an expectation of a return. That question wasn't about having everyone wear plaid and have antlers. We want to support culture. We agree with this. But if a program exists and is funded by Canadian money to export our knowledge and to have a return, I think it makes sense to ask questions about export revenue. So I don't know why my colleague went off like that, saying that everybody needs to be really showcasing culture. So I really want to thank you. Thank you, Grums, because you're a good example today of a success that was funded and has international success. So congratulations. I'd like to speak to Kelly, who's online. You said earlier that people are watching American content and a Canadian artist loses their work. Is that what you said?
Are you referencing Come From Away?
Non, c'est à la question de la présidente tantôt.
No, the chair's question earlier, I think you answered that there are a lot of people who watch American productions and then people in Canada, Canadian artists, have less media attention, less coverage, and so those people lose their work. Did I understand correctly?
Oh, no, I think it was in reference to maybe the Come From Away reference where when you're talking about developing new Canadian work and specifically with, work on a large scale like a musical, we are not able in a meaningful way to give the amount of investment needed for new musicals to happen in Canada. So the example of Come From Away was it was developed by 2 Canadian artists, 2 Canadian writers. They shopped it around, so to speak, in Canada, saying, can you invest in this product? Can you invest in this story? It did have some investment from Sheridan College that had a musical incubator program at the time run by Michael Rubinoff, and they were able to give them some workshop time. And of course, like we're doing for our national summit, you invite producers from across the country to say, here is a story that has legs, that could make some money, and that is excellent, excellent art that ticks off all of the boxes. And Canadians didn't invest. It was actually Americans that and the regional theaters that incubate to Broadway that said, okay, come over here and we'll invest. And so when something commercializes, when it moves from a not-for-profit model to commercial, you need investors. So the investors were almost exclusively American. So that means that every time the show is produced, other than the Canadian writing team, and there were a couple of Canadian actors that were invested in it, it's Americans that are making money on every single time that show is done anywhere.
Donc, en gros,
and so
c'est...
what a loss, what a loss for Canadians. I think that's what I was referencing.
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the clarification. Mr. Tumba, I'll give you the floor now. But just ensure that your microphone is close to your mouth so we can hear you well. Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you, Madam Chair. Christina Santiago. When my mother was young, she went to a village school where Canada was present through educational initiatives and cultural initiatives. Later, the interpreter notes that the sound quality does not permit accurate interpretation. Interpretation will resume when sound quality improves.
L'impact durable qui est le lien entre le Canada et les communautés du monde peuvent avoir sur les générations futures. Ma question, comment l'espace culturel...
Excusez-moi, Mr. Tumba.
Excuse me, Mr. Tumba. There's a point of order, I believe. Is that correct?
Able to interpret due to sound quality.
On vous entend pas très bien.
We don't hear you very well. It's not, the sound quality is not high enough for interpreters, Mr. Tumba. Oui.
Attendez. Est-ce que votre micro...
Could your microphone be put closer? The interpreter notes that there's echo that was not there during the sound test.
Ça va?
Continuez, Mr. Tumba.
Continue, Mr. Tumba. Let's see if it's resolved. Okay, I'll hold it near my mouth. Let's see. Can you hear me well?
Bonjour, je continue de parler pour être sûr que... Je continue de parler toujours pour être sûr qu'ils m'entendent bien. Est-ce qu'ils m'entendent bien avec le micro que j'ai rapproché? Est-ce qu'ils m'entendent bien?
On va essayer de continuer.
We'll try to continue, Mr. Tumba. The connection is okay, but the sound is not sufficient at times. All right. I was saying that today I have the honor to be before you as an MP speaking about the lasting impact Canada has had and on entire generations. My question... No, the sound is really cutting out.
Il y a un enjeu de son. C'est pas bon pour la...
Madam Chair, the sound it's not good for the safety of the interpreters. It's not just about understanding. It's also about the sound quality, which can have an impact.
Monsieur Tumba, je vais passer la parole.
Mr. Tumba, I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Rourier because we don't have much time left.
On vous entend pas bien.
We're not hearing you well, Mr. Tumba. maybe you could send your question in to the committee. We could ask them for you.
Ms. Royer, I'm going to give you the floor for the final 2 minutes,
Oh,
2.5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yikes. All right. In the cities that I represent, Coquitlam, Port Moody, and Moore-Belcarra, we have really two theaters. And that is a 200-seat theater in Port Moody and a 257-seat theater in Coquitlam, the Evergreen Cultural Center Black Box. Years ago, when I was actually still in city council, cities were doing these cultural mapping exercises, and two that really stick out. One is Kelowna, and the other one is Coquitlam. And in Coquitlam, they created a Arts, Culture, and Heritage Strategic Plan, 2015 to 2030. And it was everything from cultural mapping, community consultation, facilities planning, infrastructure assessment, treating culture as an economic engine, growing a cultural ecosystem. My question is, where can the intersection be between cities that have worked so closely with the many, many arts groups that make up their communities? How can the federal government intersect with communities to sort of identify, because we know that programming isn't the biggest challenge. It's the space. So that's one, and I also really wanted to ask about the tax credit and how it would work in practice and what it would look like, but in the seconds left, so who is the best person? I actually... You have a minute. Okay, I have a minute. I want to leave you with this as well. Please, you're all such incredible witnesses. Please write to us a written statement that can be used in testimony. This will help enrich our study, and each one of you has so much to contribute to this that I don't want anything to be left behind. So I wanted to share that, and maybe Grums, take it away. Yeah.
I can't speak to the tax credit. Don't ask me.
No.
I'm not a venue guy.
The spaces. Jonathan,
great, please.
All of you.
I think in terms of access to cultural space, or a theme that comes up often, at least in music industry reports related to live music, is there's often a recommendation to make more use of underutilized space. But there's not often much recommendation on how that space can be activated. So I would encourage the federal government to work in partnership with the provincial and municipal governments to identify spaces that might be underutilized, underused, that might benefit from adaptive reuse for culture, and to work to then identify local arts and culture partners and transfer, if not ownership, at least operation or long-term lease to these spaces of these spaces to arts groups at nominal rent. You see it all over Europe. You see all over. Obviously, it's a very different environment over there in terms of urban space, where you've got in Europe you've got old coal stations and train stations and military barracks and a lot more available real estate that is really asking to be used. It may not be the same in Canada in terms of the available real estate, but I think that looking at creative ways of taking underused warehouses, buildings, power plants, libraries, churches, and artists are creative. Artists are very good at making do with little, which doesn't mean you shouldn't fund us, but we will always give you a great investment because we're used to doing a lot with a little.
Amazing. Thank you. Please write in.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Waugh, you have the floor now for 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Bunce, that's so true. I was a school board trustee. We have beautiful theaters in the Saskatoon public school system. Aiton Bowman, after Mr. Hynett, Bedford Road, Walter Murray, Evan Hardy. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we use them 10 months of the year. Grums, thank you. We don't often talk about a provincial scene. You mentioned Creative Saskatchewan. It wasn't always there. There was lots of headwinds in our province. And I would encourage each and every one of you, you can write the submissions to Canadian Heritage, but don't forget where you've come. Saskatchewan, we've had a long and tenuous battle with the arts community, if you don't mind, in my province. We've made some inroads in the last several years, but it does take some time. And also municipalities. Sit down with your mayors and councillors because they know the spaces that could be available to each and every one of your groups, more so than you, you know. They have a handle on what's open and what's not. So saying that, Madam Chair, I would like to move a motion here this afternoon with the matter in hand. And I have copies in both official languages for the clerk to distribute to everyone. And it's actually in response to the recent CRTC decision proposing the increase, the contribution requirement of some online streaming firms, and in particular, the importance that we have a discussion here, I think, in the Committee of Canadian Heritage. The decision will obviously have a major impact, as we know, in the arts and culture sector in this country. A matter of great importance, I think, here at this committee, where we have focused on Canadian culture in this country. And now we also know we have, it's very relevant to our study here today, that the state of creative and performance spaces across this country. Additionally, of course, it's very relevant right now because we know the minister is heading down to Washington to talk about CUSMA and the potential trade irritants of the Americans that we've heard since the CRTC made the decision go 5% to 15%. And billions of dollars. I've had a couple of companies in my office in the last couple of days. We're going to lose billions of dollars in foreign production investment in this country. It's going to be affected by this major change in regulation. So we need to hear, I think, from the minister definitely on this. Now, we've heard from the government, you know, they're stating that the CRTC is at arm's length. They're not. Subject to Section 2, and the section and the governor and council may, in order, issue the commission directions of general application on broad policy matters respected to any of the objectives of the broadcasting policy set out in subsection 3 and in brackets 1, or any of the objectives of the regulatory policy set out in the subsection 5.2. So we're going to stand to lose significant foreign investment, like in the billions of dollars. This is a major issue in this country. It will affect everybody in this room. And so I therefore will move this following motion. And it reads, if I can, in English though, the Canadian Radio Television Commission, better known as the CRTC, has issued a decision to increase from 5 to 15% the contribution requirement of some online streaming firms such as Netflix, Disney+, Amazon Prime, and that Ms. Vicky Atreides, the CEO of CRTC, appear at the Standing Committee of Canadian Heritage for 2 hours to explain this decision of 5 to 15%. And given that the Cabinet has ultimate authority over such decisions, the Honourable Mark Miller, Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture and Minister responsible for official languages, appear at this Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage for 2 hours to probe how Canada's interests will be protected, considering the profound impact of this decision will have on the CUSMA negotiations that we have entered in the next month. So thank you, Madam Chair. I move this.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. I do not agree that this motion on CRTC's decisions is relevant to today's study on creative and cultural spaces. Therefore, I will take this as a notice of motion and not move today. But I have Mrs. Thomas and Mr. Miles. Oh, we can't debate that. Sorry. Maybe suspend for a moment while we look at this. Okay. So the Conservatives are challenging my decision. I think we're back. I gavelled back. You can take the floor. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chair. So my colleague, Mr. Waugh, just moved a motion with regards to the streaming tax at a cost of 15% that will be applied to Canadians due to a CRTC decision, which is backed by this Liberal government. This will negatively impact the cost for consumers. It will negatively impact investment with regards to business in the creative industry. And it will impact our trade relationship with the United States of America. So given that it has to do with creative spaces, artistic expression, support for the industry, it does in fact directly relate to the matter at hand. And so I would challenge your ruling, Chair.
Okay. That is also, I think, a dilatory motion, so we will call the vote.
Mr. Al-Soud. So the question is that the chair's ruling be sustained. If you vote yes, you're in favor of the chair's decision. Mr. Al-Soud, Mr. Miles?
Yeah.
Mr. Netumba?
Mr. Tumba, vous pouvez nous donner... Oui, oui.
Mr. Tumba, you can tell us.
Mrs. Royer? Madame Auguste?
Oui.
Mrs. Hurtle?
Oui.
Mrs. De Ridder? Monsieur Hardy?
No.
Mrs. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Waugh?
No.
Monsieur Champoux?
Chair's ruling sustained. Seeing that we're out of time, I will thank our witnesses very much for your incredible testimony today. Mr. Champoux?
On vient de voter pour la
We've just
décision.
voted on the decision that you made, Madam Chair, but I just want to ensure that the motion that was read by Mr. Waugh has been on notice. We'll be able to vote on the motion later. Yes, that's what I've understood. Thank you very much.
Testimony today, and as you heard from Ms. Royer, please submit to us anything you've forgotten to say, any thoughts that you have through our clerk, and then we can use that information when our analysts come to a report at the end of this study. But really interesting and valuable testimony today, so thank you very much. We appreciate you. Meeting adjourned.